The Aransas National Wildlife Refuge was established in 1937 to serve as a breeding ground and sanctuary for migratory birds and other wildlife. By the 1940s, the refuge had become a national and international focal point for efforts to rescue the endangered whooping cranes from extinction. At that time, only 15 birds survived in the wild. Part of the conservation efforts undertaken at the refuge included censuses of the whooping cranes to count their numbers and determine how the population was rebounding. This was all before GPS tagging was an option, and so the method of surveying the whooping cranes was to have a two-person crew fly in an airplane several times a year and take visual observations that were then mapped onto paper maps. The plane would fly low enough and slow enough for an observer to identify the cranes based on their leg bands and be able to estimate body size. These observations included the locations where the cranes were seen, how many cranes were in a group, and how many adults versus juveniles. Over time, these data were digitized into GIS format so they could be spatially analyzed. While this method of surveying cranes was quite advanced at the time, it has been scrutinized more recently for its lack of standardized sampling protocols and other effects that might have resulted in imperfect detectability of the cranes. For example, factors like observer fatigue, blind spots created by the plane, and confusion of the whooping cranes with other white birds that are found on the refuge have been criticized. However, this is the only consistently captured long-term historical data set of the cranes at Aransas National Wildlife Refuge. And the data go all the way back to the 1950s, which allows us to track the population changes over time. So despite some of the drawbacks in how the data were collected, like the potential accuracy and precision of the data, there is still value in using this rich archive. But it is important to recognize that any results derived from these data must be considered in the context of how the data were collected and what might be missing from the data set. In the next part of this module, you will be working with the whooping crane data that were captured by observers from an airplane and digitized into points. As you work with these historical data sets, keep in mind that certain types or scales of analysis might not be appropriate given some of the uncertainties in how the data were collected.